Jake here from SHW Offroad, and you are watching the Daily Drop. If this is your first time, thanks for joining us. We do this every single day. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. We got hit with more really hard last week, so I didn't get quite everyday videos out last week, but we're back this week in a new space and all that stuff. So thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about water. If you remember, last video was on vehicle fluids. Today we're going to talk about fluids for your body. We're going to talk about water because it's the most important fluid. It's at the top of the list. So thanks for joining me. We're going to dive right in. More specifically, we're going to talk about really three things. So we're going to talk about how much water you should carry. We're going to talk about how to carry water safely and correctly in your vehicle or outside your vehicle. And we're going to talk about maybe get into a little bit of sources for water when you run out, when you're out on trips or out in the backcountry or whatever. So how much water to carry? This can differ depending on your environment and who you speak to. But a good general rule of thumb is a gallon per day. I like to do 1.5 gallons just to have a little extra. We like to do dishes and potentially showers and stuff. So I do 1.5 on a typical trip. However, if I'm heading out to Utah or any other desert environment, I usually go for 2 gallons per person per day. That is my rule of thumb in drier climates, or if I feel like we're going to do a ton of hiking or a ton of activity, 2 gallons per person per day. Otherwise, it's 1.5 gallons per person per day. I like to err on the side of caution. You'd rather have it, not need it, than need it and not have it, especially when it comes to water, but you have to be mindful of weight. Water is exceptionally heavy. I think it's over 8 pounds per gallon, so it adds up really, really fast. And you have to be careful about how much you carry and where you put it on or in your vehicle. But again, 1.5 gallons per day to 2 gallons per day in drier climates. And usually if you're out in national parks or you're visiting some like state land and stuff, they'll have what they recommend on information boards and stuff. So that might be a good resource for you to learn a little bit more about where you're at and your location. But that's a good general rule of thumb. 1.5 to 2 gallons per day is what I like to do. But how I carry it varies a lot actually, how you can carry it. I carry mine in jerry cans. I have a smaller vehicle, so space is limited. I like jerry cans because there's a lot of different mounting options outside the vehicle for jerry cans. And I've said this before on the channel, but a lot of people like to throw fluids on the roof. Just be mindful of that. If you're gonna throw 10 gallons of water on the roof, you wanna keep the other things in your rack quite light, right? And just keep your center of gravity in mind and all that kind of good stuff and your weight ratings for your rack. But jerry cans is a good option. There's tons of collapsible jugs out there too. If you want a solution to carry water, but when it's empty, you like for it to save, or if you'd like to save space. So collapsible jugs are big. There's all kinds of different shaped and sizes jugs and cubes that kind of stack and nest together. So there's tons of solutions for that. But for larger volume, there's a couple manufacturers that make really great larger volume tanks that either go in the vehicle or in the bed of a truck. Two that come to mind are Ironman and Front Runner. Both of them manufacture tons of different form factors of these tanks. I'm gonna actually try to find one for you just to show you the form factor of them. And what I love about some of these tanks is they usually put water where it lives best, whether that be up against the cab of a vehicle or in the footwells of an SUV. They really put the weight where it goes best, right? You want it towards the center of the vehicle, you want it down low. So Ironman has tons of different form factors and different sizes. They do these little flat ones too for truck beds and stuff like that. Front Runner does a footwell water tank that fits in tons of different vehicles as well. So there's lots of solutions for that. If you are someone that needs a little, or if you'd like a little more volume in one tank, there's tons of great solutions for that. So in a nutshell, again, there's a few ways you can carry it. whether that be jerry cans, collapsible jugs, or in some larger volume tanks like Front Runner and Ironman make. So we've got how much to carry, how you should carry it. However, if you run out of water, what do you do from there? There's a couple great resources out there on safely harvesting or collecting water for consumption. But really, you can boil it down. You need to collect, you need to filter, and you need to disinfect. There are a number of ways to do all three of those things. There's tons and tons of great articles and resources and products out there for it. If you'd like a really reputable source to get some information from, the National Park Service actually has some stuff on their website. I'm going to put a link to it in the description of this video, but there's a little article they did on what you should do and how to disinfect water. Really, there's a few ways you can disinfect after you've collected. You can boil, or you can use disinfection, and there's disinfection tablets, there's disinfection chemicals and stuff like that, and UV is an option too. So there are lots of choices on what you can do if you do run out of water, but you're gonna have to carry the appropriate gear, and you're gonna have to know how to use it. So this is a quick one today, but it's really important. I hope you learned something new. If you've got something to add, drop it in the comments. If you've got something that you would love to dive into in the future, let us know. This channel is driven off of your requests and what you're looking for. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about rooftop tents. It's a hot topic. They're so popular, and there are a lot of different opinions on them, one way or another. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the downfalls of rooftop tents, and I'm going to have a follow-up video the next day, probably talking about some of my favorite things about rooftop tents. I've owned one for a while. A lot of people on our team, on the SHW Offroad team and the Commonwealth 4x4 team, have ran them for a while. So we've got a general idea of what we love about them and maybe things that you should consider before purchasing one. So join me tomorrow. We're going to talk about rooftop tents. Otherwise, thanks again for watching today, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.